So Lost Ark was released into the West and everyone was like, then after, players purchased a head start and released their initial impressions to the gaming world, and the gaming world responded with, needless to say, this game is a success, amassing the second largest concurrent players in Steam's history, although developed and released in Korea over 2 years prior to its Western release. Amazon Games published the game and it officially released on Steam on the 11th of February, which begs the question, is Amazon Games a better publisher than developer? Case in point, New World. Lost Ark is a free-to-play MMO with ARPG aspects, with the ability to spend real money in its cash shop, although I must emphasize I could play it in the beginning hours without even looking at the shop. Whether this changes closer to endgame or not, I can't say at this moment. It's an isometric 2.5D game, which may remind you of famous titles such as Diablo 2 and Path of Exile, which I hear being constantly sourced online. And having played both titles, I tend to agree. Your role is simply to kill hordes of enemies as you level up and power up to take on more advanced enemies and bosses later in the game through teaming up with other players in chaos dungeons and raids. I have played this game for just over 10 hours, so treat this as a first impressions look into the game without any bias. I didn't hear about this game until literally just last week. I decided to play this game as blindly as possible, receiving very little information before picking it up myself. This is how I like to play games initially. This video will be until I complete the first major turning point in the game and unlock strongholds. First things first, pending no queue is your character creation, which you'll select one of 5 starting classes available, and more are said to be released in the future. I won't go into the character creation here, but it has a good amount of customization and sliders, which to my knowledge you can change at some point in the game. You have your typical hardened melee focused war driven warrior, a staple in many games, the mage, your typical caster, martial artist, blending punch and kicks like a typical monk style class, gunner, your typical range DPS, and assassin. Your classes are gender locked, with so far the martial artist and gunner allowing either gender. Gender locking isn't exactly outside of the norm for Eastern games. However, what perplexes me off the bat is that within the gender locking for the martial artist and gunner are the advanced classes. They are different and it just doesn't make sense to me right now. Maybe it's for some low reason, but it just feels very strange that your advanced class is locked because of your gender. Next up, you'll get a little personal story for your class and enter Trixion, your training room to allow you to preview each of your advanced classes. Think of this like your specialty within your class. Your main gameplay focus will be determined here. I started with the warrior and I found myself torn between the berserker and paladin. I tried all 3 of the advanced classes and I tended to favour the paladin. The paladin resonated more so as I do like to combine physical and magical in games where possible, and I also have a long history of playing paladin between my early days as a World of Warcraft player and lately my adventure as a paladin in Diablo 2 Resurrected. These 2 experiences, funnily enough, embody a lot of what this game is, the MMO and the ARPG style combat. Armed with my holy skills and my big ass armor, I dove into the tutorial to get a feel. The story is serviceable, but nothing that keeps you incredibly engaged. The majority of players will just probably go through the motions, getting to max level of 50 and go through the gearing system. The tutorial can be skipped, but of course it is ideal to get a basic handling of the game and get introduced to the main villain, at least to my knowledge so far. The main story quest seems to just go back and forth between hero versus villain, light versus darkness, and repeat the cycle throughout the game. So what we find out very quickly is when it comes to combat, the game throws a lot of enemies at you at the same time. We get a moment where we decide a slight story change or not, but either way it seems to play out the exact same. Next we're tossed into a mini dungeon where we fight a boss and introduced to some basic dodge mechanics shown by red markers on the ground. And we can use our multiple combat buttons and weave them together to take down the boss. A nice little introduction fight to the game. From here, we're tasked with arming to enter Home, our first major hub of the game. One downside I noticed right away, which definitely detracts from your starting experience, is not actually gameplay driven or even graphical or audio. It's the main chat box, which is filled with gold spammers. I don't know if there's a single MMO out there without this problem, but I hope the developers counteract this very soon, as it drove me to keep my chat box set to system specific to focus on myself. And although questing solo is a large part of the game if you want it to be, it further drove me to this single focused thinking. It's also a shame for any player's questions as they're lost in the spam. Sure, you can block each spammer, but a new one will take its place quickly. From here, I'm introduced to multiple vendors and systems that the game throws at you. A huge one seems to be this adventure tome, which is tied to each continent. Every 10% I'm given a reward for exploration, killing certain monsters, field bosses, completing main and side dungeons, main story quests and side quests. Right out of the gate, the game gives you a mount to make your travelling much faster. It teaches me about emotes, and some quests may require them to be used to be completed. It appears that there are many emotes with more unlocked as we progress. Leaving the city into Log Hill, the next area in the game, it introduces me to the challenge list, where by completing basic steps it will net me a small reward to keep me on track as I adventure. I like this as it gently guides players into completing basic tasks and getting them used to it. It appears there will be many more challenges unlocked as I progress. I notice a player is examining something, which instinctively has me do the same, so I bend down and gather a seed, and I have no idea what this is at first, but I find out it's a collectible which is tied to rewards if I find enough of them spread throughout the game. And just to note, there's over 1,200 currently in the game, so there's a lot of collectibles to get. From here, I notice I'm bypassing a lot of enemies when I don't need to kill them, as grinding in this game for experience is pointless as it gives so little. However, they do drop loot. I tend to only kill what I need to kill to keep quests moving, and I'm noticing more and more by now that I have multiple quests in play at the same time. Questing is a very quick process, and generally once you're in the correct zone indicated on the map, you'll have a quest done in typically seconds, and side quests are treated the exact same. I like that most quests you don't need to backtrack to hand in, which allows for some fantastic leveling pacing. I level up and I can see when my next new skill is being unlocked, and I have a nice selection of current abilities which I can level up by spending the 5 skill points I obtain each level. What I love about how Lost Ark handles its leveling and skills is that you are never tied to the choice you make, and at any time add or subtract the earned skill points. I see also that skills on the 4th, 7th and 10th level of each skill, I can add an additional effect to the skill, which also I can change at a moment's notice. Skill levels require more skill points to level as their level increases, so I found myself changing skill points a lot. I can only have 8 skills active at any one time, so it won't be too long until I may be swapping in and out skills and their levels to see what works for my playstyle. I also notice I can save these to presets to instantly load a build, which will be nice later on when I want to choose between different tasks the game may throw at me, such as a build for bosses, another for weaker monsters, one for certain activities, etc. Experimentation overload, love it, keep it in the game, thank you. What I find very interesting as well is that they implemented a recommendation feature, which the game saves data of what percentage of players are using each skill, so it can help you make choices of what you eventually will aim towards. Instead of looking up third-party websites for the best builds, it can literally all be done in the game without needing to tab out. So taken directly from my live stream was when I first acquired my pet, Sir Hopsalong, a white bunny. Pets auto-loot everything for you, which is freaking cool, so I don't need to mouse over everything. They come with pet effects to boost some various stats, which can also be reforged. They also have many other pet functions, such as expanding your inventory, remote marketplace, mail, repairs, etc. However, the catch here is, if you want these quality of life improvements, you actively have to have a monthly subscription, something the game constantly reminds you. With Sir Hopsalong at my back, I venture into Log Hill, and after some further progression, I'm thrown into my first dungeon of the main storyline, and you can complete this on normal or hard mode. Hard mode can offer better completion rewards, but enemies will hit harder and have more HP, from what I'm noticing. I decided to throw myself directly into the hard difficulty, cause why not? It's a pretty linear layout, but I'm noticing enemies can gang up on you and chunk into your HP quite quickly. With how many healing potions the game throws at you, and with very short cooldown at that, it's very hard to kill my paladin. So I'm thrown into some cavern filled with poisonous flowers, scorpions and bugs. At the end, I fight a pretty straightforward boss who has multiple red glowing ground effects, which I'm starting to get better at dodging out of. Oh, but wait. That's not it. There's actually another boss and I'm embarrassingly not dodging some basic things. But even as a hard mode, I'm still not dying. I tend to be relying on my shields a bit more than I should be. But wait, that's not all. There's another boss in here. So there's a boss after the boss. Okay, this is really a dungeon. And I'm embarrassingly not dodging some basic things. But even as a hard mode, I'm still not dying. So it kind of begs the question, is this really hard? I tend to be relying on my shields a bit more than I should be. The boss has a nice variety of attacks though, but he goes down and bursts full of loot. You just gotta love the sight. Now I found myself drawn towards a completely optional dungeon in the northeast of the zone to further the storyline about the plague. Of course, I picked the hard mode cause why not? Although realistically, with how fast you get upgrades as I'm leveling, normal would be more than sufficient. The possible upgrades from hard will just make some content a little faster. Just slightly off the main trail, I find a seed. I do enjoy this exploration aspect of the game, but with over 1,200 of these little things to find, I know I'm never going to want to complete that. But they do add a little bit of roster experience, which can be used to boost up all the characters on the server's stats, so your alts can start off a little bit beefier to make repeated plays a little bit easier and faster. The game is just tasking me to continuously clear out the hordes as I make my way through this dungeon, and lo and behold, I destroy a wall, which opens up a monster I need for my adventure tome and 2 more seeds. Just goes to show, guys, it pays to use your eyes. A little bit deeper in now and I battle it out with the Plague Bringer, the end boss of the dungeon, but he seemed to just topple over a lot faster than I expected. A shame really, as he did look interesting. What I also like, it offers a little bit more story here, but once again, it was completely optional. A quick song of escape and I leave the dungeon. Coming into some salt region now as I ding level 19 and mess around with more skills, something I'm continuously changing per level, putting points in and taking them out of others. I do notice that this leveling experience is extremely linear, although as if I'm guided by rails, with chances of course to change it up slightly with an optional dungeon here or there, or a bit of exploration on the side. But to do anything I must follow the main story quest. MMOs typically, you get more options when leveling or complete different parts of the area in any order you wish, but here it's literally A to B to C. Remember how I talked about completing hard mode in a dungeon cause just why not? That's something I feel more and more now. The game is just too easy. You will obliterate everything without so much as a scratch in most cases. You can unleash every skill and repeat on everything you see. It's starting to get a bit boring with combat even as I'm adding new skills at a regular pace. It's just too easy. We need a little bit more challenge just to keep us on our toes. Make it more enjoyable. After killing a lot of bandits, I'm tasked with entering their den and quickly disposing of their leader, with plenty of arrows on my minimap indicating a lot of climbing sections. I also get a secret scroll, which shares a hidden location on my map, something I know I'll get a lot more of as I adventure. Now I make it my duty to drop everything and find where this secret location is. It seems that when I'm near it, it will tell me how many steps and in what direction I should be headed. Of course, if you use your eyes on the main map and pair it up with this little scroll map, you won't need this extra help. I come across the secret dungeon and a portal allows me access. Within I find some regular monsters, a boss, a very small dungeon which obviously serves just to get me some additional rewards, such as earrings, rings, necklace slot, which if this is your first, you'll get a nice stat increase. Along with this, the monster dropped a card, something I have picked up quite a number by now while I was questing. Some came from adventure tome rewards, even some from named monsters. This card system seems to be a bit tricky, but it's basically like Pokemon. You just gotta catch them all, and along with that you get some set bonuses and you can also level up the cards. I haven't really attempted to do this thus far, but gathering sets, I seem to see that you get nice little stat improvements, and some collections can actually give you additional stats too. I pick up another level, bringing me to level 20, obtained a new skill, the dash slash, but I don't really find it very appealing right now to my gameplay. I definitely by this time have been studying up on skills on what people tend to be using, and also bringing together aspects of my own playstyle so far. A little further in the area now, and I'm tossed into a scenario to defend a meeting from an all-out outlaw assault. It looks like the bandit leader couldn't command his pet, and the game gives me a choice to save him or not. I chose to save him, although now I wish I didn't. He leaves us to deal with the worm, and my screen gets covered in darkness until Armin comes to save the day, like he always seems to. And with the crash of light, the worm is no more, bringing me to level 21 in lightning speed. One thing this game does well is its set pieces, because when it displays some areas, it is absolutely gorgeous. We help Armin in the Morai ruins after uncovering it from the depths and in search of the sword seal, the first piece of the Ark, I believe. In this section, we need to find levers to lower the water further to allow us to venture forth. Throughout, we are dealing with the corrupted civilization living here, some troll-like enemies with big clay warriors mostly. Along the way, I find some big battle set pieces and some traps too. I like the diversity in the pacing here, as it's something different the game is offering us than simply smash your way to victory. I need to try watch the floor for spikes, but I get overconfident, get stabbed quite a bit, but nevertheless survive. Even once again, it's on hard mode. This brings us to the boss of the area. This setup is splendid. The designers are using the clay warriors we fought before to slowly advance forward like a wall, but if we get too close or even attack them, they will become aggressive. A nice way to force yourself into a smaller play section of the room, as the boss has multiple dodge abilities. But in the tight spacing, it can get tricky. I actually die here for the first time in a dungeon, but luckily I had an instant resurrect thanks to the Phoenix Plume item, which I'm being rewarded throughout my adventure. Since these are very limited, I would caution to possibly only use these in dungeons, otherwise I would resurrect outside, and I presume the boss would reset if that was the case. Pressing on, it seems there's more than one boss in here, and I need to contend with another trap room. It's a set of walls slamming in on me. However, I found this much easier to recognise the pattern compared to the floor traps. I notice a breakable door, and I proceed to find some additional seeds in here. Once again, the game is rewarding me for keen observation. Nice touch. I encountered a fallen shaman boss, which seems to be the leader of these troll-like enemies. Using the trolls as cannon fodder, the boss teleports around the room, but alas is no match for me. But it seems that's not all. The dungeon is still not complete. So far, this is easily the longest dungeon I've been on. Pushing on after plenty more fights, now it seems like I'm about to fight the final boss of the dungeon, which is a demon boss, the king of the abyss, who is guarding the item we need to continue. The boss has some cool abilities, but most noticeably, it's a multi-phase encounter, with Armin coming in to stop the boss with his light skills. But even Armin is not enough to stop him, and we both now must press on into the next phase, which adds more attacks to dodge. Now the game does something very different. I need to pick up an item and move it into the light and move my cursor over the boss to direct the light to interrupt the boss. Once again, a nice touch to make this dungeon stand out. I will assume ahead of time for any big story sections of the game, we may be introduced to multiple new mechanics to spice things up just a little bit to prevent it from getting stale. I for one am impressed here by the change of flow, and not just the change of flow in the water. Once we bring down the boss's life bar once again, the sword seal is finally ours. Oh, but wait, Carmen comes to ruin the party, but he is no match for Armin and they both disappear. And not only does this allow us to pick up the sword seal, but it also gives us those fat loots in a chest. And yes, it feels so good to open up a chest full of fat loots. I continue and finish my way through the next zone and end up in another dungeon. I've hit level 24 by now and found myself face to face with a mucus monstrosity, which I need to make sure I stay away from standing in front of him as he vomits his mucus everywhere. I get out of the dungeon and notice my chat is being spammed by people mentioning a salt giant is up. So I find out where it is on chat, I go to the area and I kill the boss with the help of everyone else in the area. This also fills up my adventure tome, which gives me extra rewards, and I get extra loot from just killing the boss itself. And once per day, I can keep killing this boss and get extra loot. In this next dungeon, I notice that there are 2 levers in the area spread out, but when I find both of them and click them, a little secret enclave opens up with more seeds before I enter an area full of enemies which almost kill me, so I make sure to lure some out instead of barging directly straight in. Something I will surely remember from now on. Shortly after mowing down more enemies, I come in contact with the end boss, which proved to be an easy enough challenge to take down despite some missteps from his attacks, and we are treated to another scene where the boss begs Carmine for another chance. It's at this moment we see how Carmine will treat anyone who shows weakness around him. Something tells me this will happen a lot more as the game continues. We push forward to further zones, where I'm now at level 25, and I'm finally introduced to trade skills in the game. There are 6 to choose from. Fishing, mining, logging, foraging, hunting, and digging. Each skill needs a tool to begin, but I learned not to buy these right away. Just wait for the game to give you the quest associated with that skill, so you get the free tool along with an easy upgrade variant upon completion. You're welcome. Each skill will no doubt become important at endgame in particular, but for now I just sometimes do bits here and there as I focus on leveling. I enter a monastery and find myself shuffling through tunnels pretty much throughout this entire zone, bringing me to level 26. Towards the final portion of the area, it opens out into a nice green section, which is teaching us now to forge the flowers. I find this occurs in almost every zone, but the game likes to leave usually a rather sizable portion of the map without any quests within, and leaves it up to you to explore if you wish or not. I guess they could pad out the leveling a little bit more with quests to help leveling up a little bit faster in these zones if they really wanted. Away from the dark monastery section, we enter the next zone of Bilbrin Forest, full of bears and wolves, and without a doubt, the introduction here will have me learn how to hunt prey for my next trade skill. It involves you tracking the critter, which you can toggle on and off, and then throwing a spear at it before collecting its meat. I'm liking this zone's lushness and vibrant colour palette and variety of enemies, as sometimes the enemy selection can be very limited. I'm now being taught how to log trees, which is quite a lengthy setup, but it actually allows up to 2 players to harvest them at the same time, with a changed animation to you both helping each other. Nice touch. Soon after, the chat notifies me that there's a field boss active, similar to how we found the snow giant we faced before, so I decided to team up and fight this giant plant to reap the rewards. These bosses can be challenging, even more so with less people. I just wish the game had more content like this as you level up, and not just rely on it at endgame. I enter the next area, and immediately I collect a quest teaching me the fundamentals to finding relics. I simply use my sonar, walk around a little bit until it flashes, and then press another button to locate the relic and collect it. It's a little bit more of a tedious process, but it's faster than logging a tree. With level 28 in the bag, I found myself in the final section of the continent, where all the major players are now in place, and I feel the story is heightening up. Although the story is quite forgettable for the most part, I did pay attention to the main storyline. The side quests, I just found myself skipping the text and checking on the map where to go. This section is another major set piece, where we are helping Terrain to reclaim his throne to become the king of Lutera, from what I like to call the false king. Both armies come head to head here with your typical good versus evil fight. Now here is where we face the culmination of the story thus far, in a very impressive set piece where we are taking the battle directly into Lutera Castle and reclaiming it for ourselves. It's moments like this that make me love the set pieces in this game, and I hope they continue to occur during the story and post-story. We need to retake the walls and help our army to have a successful siege. We scale the battlements to assist, and others will assist us as we progress. Eventually we will take out some mages, keeping our battering ram from destroying the door. And the final huge onslaught begins as we need to take down a legion of defenders as we make our way to the throne room. But before that, we must take out another boss while Terrain charges ahead. Now it's down to myself to end the tyranny of the current king, who fell over a little bit too fast for my liking, but he had some impressive animations, so I wish they just gave him maybe double the health or something like that. But before all is said and done, Carmine unleashes the same demon we found earlier to give us a final proper battle. The game introduces us to how bosses can shield themselves, and although the boss itself has nice abilities, it's just over a little bit too fast, just like pretty much every boss that I've faced so far. Once again, it's just a little bit too easy. Doubling their health would have made this all the better. Now that the demon is weakened, but not yet defeated. Well, remember how I said before that I had no doubt that Carmine will repeat what happens when demons get weak around him? Yeah, he steals his power and then vanishes. We are now treated to multiple cutscenes, and there we have it. The end to my first impressions at this point, ending me at also level 29 after the cutscenes have ended. I sufficiently feel I have uncovered a good portion of the leveling experience to give my first impressions. But first, there is one rather important system I wanted to get out of the way, and that's the Stronghold system, Lost Ark's version of player housing, which takes place on a group of islands, all for your very self. After assisting the king, he grants me my very own stronghold to teleport to at any time I wish. Upon entering, we are greeted by my waifu, and she explains the basics of the stronghold through a rather lengthy tutorial. Within, we can gather materials and build many structures over time to fill out the island. Some of these structures can add bonuses to the island too. Along with this, we have a lab where we can research new features in real time, which can be reduced with items. We also have a workshop for crafting ships, items and structures. All of these features can be leveled up also to unlock more unlockables. The next big feature is the station, where we can send out crews on missions and they come back after a few real-time hours with rewards. Each mission has a percentage success chance, which you can then manipulate with your ships and crew. You gain crew over time or by buying their associated contracts. This is a way to gain further resources in a very casual friendly aspect. This entire stronghold system seems to go quite hand in hand with trade skills, as you need items to make almost everything. Simply log in, do your mobile game like real-time mission tables and structure completion. Log out. I have no doubt this will be integral by end game. This system adds even more currencies into the game, and there's already far too much. So we'll start with the pros. It's a free-to-play game. It's very alt-friendly and expects you to play multiple classes by endgame. Classes are fleshed out with a great variety of skills and tripods to change those skills around. The game world is huge, with a huge list of activities to do, no doubt a heavy emphasis on endgame content. The game pushes you to max level quite quickly to get the real meat out of the game with very little backtracking. From gameplay footage that I saw, you can free sail the world after a set point in leveling, so this would open up the game a lot. The scale of the game will be exponential. I hear the PvP is amazing in this game, but I did not partake. This opens up at the same time you get the stronghold. But of course every game has its cons, so here we go. Classes are gender locked, with genders within classes limited on advanced classes too. When learning about pets, it continuously reminds you about how paying to keep skills is useful, nudging you on the cash shop. Although the cash shop is not shoved in your face very often, the pricing itself is very overwhelming. You may argue that this game is pay to win, but it is at the very least pay to gain advantage. The story is serviceable but criminally forgettable, even more so after the Lutera Castle section. The leveling up experience is too easy and can get very monotonous and boring as everything dies almost instantly. Majority of quests are click and collect or kill enemies, making the whole leveling system feel almost pointless. The leveling experience up to what I have witnessed is fully linear, with little room for deviation outside of collectibles. It may not be a game everyone will enjoy, but you can easily sink a couple of hours into this behemoth of a game. The game map is huge. There are plenty of collectibles for those who want to seek them out. It is probably one of the most exciting releases in the MMO sphere we have seen in quite a while in the West. It's no wonder it took Korea and Russia by storm previously. I wish you well, adventurer in Arcadia. Thank you for watching, and remember to like this video to help me with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to see more videos in the future. And until we meet again, my unicorn, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Take care.